Good morning, colleagues. I'm Jenny Pyatt. I'm the Division Bureau Administrator for the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Growth, Michigan Rehabilitation Services Bureau. I am a white middle-aged female with medium brown hair and glasses and identify as she and hers. For our panel session, we know this audience is well aware of unique dynamic of disability, race, even poverty. Our intent is to increase, the awareness about the intersection. You're going to hear that word a lot, intersection of race on the challenges people of color with disabilities face. Without a doubt, we must continue to have serious conversations about people of color and disability. This is when our innovation and our new ideas, including partnerships, as our conference theme states, can help move the needle on disability employment. We will be elaborating on the evolution of our partnership, but also as it relates to elevating the conversation about race and disability and a need for collective action that will support both of our customers, individuals with disabilities and business, as well as our own internal organizations, particularly for vocational rehabilitation. So VR, as we know, has been around for just over 100 years. And honestly, this truly, I believe, is because our profession has become very skilled at evolving and innovating. Next slide, please. There is power and value in numbers. Let's start there. It can determine policy, funding, and service provision. Perhaps you're already aware that 26% of Americans have a disability. You're likely familiar with this as it's widely shared from revered and recognized resources such as the CDC, the US Department of Labor, or Bureau of Labor Statistics. But furthermore, many of you no doubt are also very familiar with the low number of disability employment at 19.3%, as compared to 66.3% of non-disabled individuals in employment. And maybe many are also familiar with the results from a 2004 survey, whereas 2/3 of the unemployed respondents with disabilities indicated that they would like to work, but could not find employment. We also have data on disability and age, gender, race, ethnicity within the LGBTQ community. We know that 2 in 5 over the age of 65 have a disability. 1 in 4 women have a disability. 25% of Black Americans have a disability. 2 in 5 within the non-Hispanic American Indian, Alaskan Native American population have a disability, as do 3 to 5 million individuals in the LGBTQ community. We even have data on the unemployment rates for individuals that are not necessarily disabled, but do identify as belonging to some protected class. 57% of women, 62.3% of Black Americans, and 66% of Latinx are working. But what about the employment, or rather unemployment rate, of individuals with disabilities that also identifies a member of another protected class? Though there's much research and data out there about disability statistics, disability employment, rates of disability by race, gender, and sexual orientation, there's little information in the way of the employment rate where these intersect, hence our conversation today. Next slide, please. Even though there appears to be a lack of information on disability intersectionality and employment, we are aware of the challenges that individuals with disabilities alone face. We also recognize that individuals who identify as belonging to other protected classes face their own unique challenges specific to employment and in obtaining quality services that are crucial to employment success. When brought together in the intersection, those challenges do not disappear, but rather quite the opposite is what we've learned. This population still needs services to be successful in employment, such as community supports, including vocational rehabilitation, and appropriate healthcare to manage their disability and maintain overall health. We know disparities exist also in these services, and we know they impact employment success. These are unfortunate reality for many. Over the past year, America has faced 2 simultaneous crises, the COVID-19 pandemic alongside the acknowledgement of historic racism, coupled with the need to eradicate systematic racism. These crises have impacted the population that vocational rehabilitation serves. Individuals with disabilities represented a large number of lives lost due to the pandemic, more so than those without disabilities. But those that remained healthy, we know were still impacted, hence the long haulers COVID-19 that you hear. This is where we see very current and relevant information specific to intersectionality. 20% of persons with disabilities who were working in January of 2020 were out of work by May of 2020, whereas individuals with disabilities who also represent a diverse racial or ethnic identity experienced job loss rate at 35% during the same time frame. Again, there's power in the numbers. Okay, so we have established the why related to the continuous need to challenge our old methods and embrace new ideas and thinking. Let's transition now to the what and the how. We're trying to address the need for promoting new partnerships and approaches to serving individuals with disabilities. When our team put this presentation together, I just want to backtrack just a slight moment here. A picture came to mind about our mutual partnership between Michigan Diversity Council and Michigan Rehabilitation Services. Think back to your 440-yard baton relay that maybe your high school or junior high school gym class teacher made you run. Usually it was a team of 4, and in each team had a baton that must be handed off to each person in order, right? Well, one advantage of a relay team is that each member shoulders a portion of the load. So another is that you can leverage the strengths of each member by how you position the runners. For the Michigan Diversity Council and Michigan Rehab Services, our relay team, if you will, allows us to align our respective organizations' resources, our strengths, to help move that needle on disability employment. Michigan Rehabilitation Services are also known as MRS. You'll hear that through the presentation. And specifically, the Business Network Division within the Bureau, comprised of business relation consultants and occupational therapists, work in that disability employment space with the business community, as does the Michigan Diversity Council, who also works closely with business in that DE&I, or diversity, equity, access, and inclusion space. So this marriage of disability employment and DEA&I creates an even stronger platform for business to support their employees and support individuals with disabilities, and really the customers that the businesses also serve. Oftentimes businesses want to make sure that they are reflective of their customers by their own employee base and even the products that they're making available or services that they're making available and accessible to the consumer. So let's hear a little bit more about intersectionality, DE&I, and the impact on the business community from our esteemed colleague, community partner, and friend, Darlene King, Executive Director of the Michigan Diversity Council, branch of the National Diversity Council. Darlene.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I really appreciate it. So it is an honor and a pleasure to be with you all today. So I think it's very important to level set when Jenny talks about running the race together, exactly who we are as an organization. The Michigan Diversity Council is a branch of the National Diversity Council. We are about an 18-year-old nonprofit organization that is corporately headquartered out of Houston, Texas. We are in 20 markets across the US, and we service over 650 corporate partners in all things workplace and community related diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as racial and social justice. So when you think about that baton concept of running that race, if you're going to be in that relay race, you really need to be able to have some partners that you can pass off the baton to, so they can either run the next leg of the race and help you all win from a collective perspective. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit today, exactly why our partnership is so important and how the concept and the best practices, benchmarking, and principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion tie in so beautifully with this conversation around supporting individuals that identify with disabilities in the workplace. Next slide, please. So the question is, what's in a successful corporate DE&I strategy? Most people, when they think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, the very first thing that comes to their mind is race automatically, or gender, when in reality, there are so many multiple benefits to this work that we call diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's workforce development, which is such a huge piece for all people, but especially for those that are identified as a part of the disability community. Organizations that have a very robust diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, they are very intentional about ensuring that they are being inclusive of individuals of this community so that they too can have an opportunity towards equity. It is also about corporate responsibility. What is the responsibility of corporations when it comes to workforce development and hiring and supporting individuals with disabilities? So it is so very important from that aspect for organizations to really be able to tie in this segment of the population within their strategies through a corporate responsibility perspective, so that they're not only reaching individuals internally, but they're also engaging with the communities and other organizations externally, so that they can increase their pipelines, they can increase their awareness, they can increase their understanding around the laws around ADA and reasonable accommodations and self-identification. All of those are major important strategies that kind of fall under the overall umbrella of DE&I that fall under corporate responsibility. Then there's community engagement. Community engagement is huge. If organizations and corporations are not reaching outside of their four walls of operation to really be able to tap into organizations like MRS or Disability Inc. or any other type of organization that is out there to be able to support this community, then they are engaging in an epic fail when it comes to community engagement and involvement, and really being at the forefront of ensuring that the message about inclusion and including this community as a part of the process is so very important. But there has to be a mutual understanding and respect around the work within itself. For agencies such as ours and other organizations and other community organization, whether that is your Chamber of Commerce that may have some ties into the community, whether that is with your any other local agencies and or groups within the communities, to be able to say, hey, we are here, we want to support, we are an ally, and we need to be able to collectively connect together in order to move the needle when it comes to the community, the disability community, through our in community engagement. There's also employee engagement. You know, it's one thing to be able to increase your pipeline when it comes to having individuals work within organizations that identify with a disability, but it is another thing to educate your employees or the other employees within the organization so that they too can understand what the needs are, so they too can understand what it really means to be an ally for this population and for this community as they enter into the workforce, and as we increase that pipeline and that participation within the workforce, even for those that are already in the workforce. Jenny showed you the slide with all of the stats based upon race and based upon ethnicity and so and gender. So there's already huge populations of individuals within our organizations that we need to be able to educate other colleagues and raise the awareness. All of these components are a part of diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies. Then there's governing social and public affairs. It is so very important for Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies that have traditionally lobbyists or a governing department or a public affairs department to really be able to lobby within their own communities in their own states that they have around opportunities for inclusion, around opportunities to advance the appreciation for diversity, around opportunities to be able to advance equity and scrub policies and procedures that are designed and that were designed to keep people that look different, sound different, and come from different places where others may or may not have come from as a part of this work. Jenny made reference to it earlier when she talked about the pandemic, and she talked about the reckoning on race and reaching equity in our society. Those two things simultaneously has caused us as individuals, hopefully, as corporations and as communities and as government, to really begin to take a look at what systems and structures have been in place since the beginning of time to keep individuals out of having equal access to opportunity, to equity, based solely upon race, based solely upon gender or ability or disability along the way. So having the governing social and public affairs department to be able to help dismantle those systems that have been into play for so long to keep diversity, equity, and inclusion off of the forefront is now just moving in rapid speeds and rapid rates in order to increase more diversity, equity, and inclusion in our society. So I want you to remember that when we talk about the disability community, here's an opportunity to really be able to understand, as you are engaging with other corporate leaders and you're engaging with individuals that are involved in workforce development, or you're engaging within the community, or you are talking to your employees, how is it that we're going to be able to increase our corporate participation along the way? If you have a really great understanding of some of the key pillars to what a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy has, such as these, then it gives you that knowledge base to be able to advance your conversation as you are engaging with others, to help hold them accountable for what it is that they say that they're going to do, to help hold them accountable around their diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies, which are traditionally designed to be able to include all those underrepresented individuals and populations as a part of the process, to not only have a seat at the table, but to also be given a cup and a fork and a knife and a plate of food at the same time. So we have to move past this. We're just going to give you a seat at the table. We also have to give you the other tools necessary in order for individuals to be able to be present. So just a great synopsis and chunk for you to be able to understand how to tap further into advancing the work that you do through the efforts of diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies and plans. And so the next question is, why should this be important to you? You know, we've talked about it from a corporate umbrella perspective around strategies and exactly what corporations are looking to increase and how they're looking to be more inclusive and how they're looking to be more diverse and how they're looking to be more equitable. But the question becomes, well, what other components does that include? And so Jenny talked a little bit earlier about intersectionality. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I want you to understand that previously I said that diversity, equity, and inclusion is about more than race, and it is about more than gender, which are the two components that we can see with our naked eye. Next slide, please. So when we talk about DE&I, there are 54 components to this work. When you saw the 5-point strategy pillars in the previous slide, the question becomes, well, what's engaged and involved in all of those variables of those 5 key pillars? Not to say that there aren't other pillars based upon your industry and based upon the work that you do. There are other pillars that a lot of organizations either add to, they usually don't take away from those 5, but they usually add a few. How do we reach all of those pieces and what's incorporated in them outside of race and outside of gender? So there is also succession planning, which is a huge piece to this work. Multicultural education, cultural competency, executive leadership. It is so very important for leaders at the highest level of any organization, for-profit, nonprofit group, for them to be committed and dedicated to this work. If they are not committed and dedicated to this work, it traditionally becomes an epic fail. That's just the reality to it. Leaders have to be accountable and they have to be committed to doing this work. So executive leadership is a part of those 5 key strategy points that we saw in the previous slide. Diversity recruitment, the HR pipeline, all of these pieces are definitely a part of it. The generational divide and gap. There are 5 generations in the workplace right now. They are all different. They are all completely different, but it is so very important for us to be able to understand how to tap into the needs and the differences of the generations in order to create greater productivity, greater engagement, and greater teams within our organizations. You just can't say, well, that's the way we have always done things, or that's the way we used to do things. It is so very important to be able to address the needs of the generations within your organization. Corporate messaging and mission. It is a huge piece and so very important for entities that are really dedicated to this work to let it be known and to wear it on their chest like a shield to say, hey, we are a diverse, equitable, and inclusive organization. Here's our mission. Here's our vision. You want to be able to tap into those organizations that say that this is what their mission and their vision is, because it helps you as a community partner be able to keep them accountable for what they say that they're going to do, opposed to, just putting the message out there. So it's one thing to, read a message or read a website or, hear a CEO make a statement. It's another to tap into the fact, are they really, really doing this? So corporate messaging and the mission of this work is so, so huge. Of course, you have your global diversity, you have advocacy, pay equity, all of these pieces that you see are a part of reaching into diversity, equity, and inclusion. And these are the things that we as partners have been able to engage in, and the work that we have been able to do between MRS and the Michigan Diversity Council. We've been able to help share some of the knowledge and expertise that we have around the aspects and components of diversity to help MRS be able to increase their awareness around the work, to be able to increase their ability to tap into other organizations based upon what they say their DE&I strategy and mission is, as well as MRS being able to help us and our corporate partners here in the state of Michigan understand the importance and the nuances around supporting the disability community. On the last slide that Jenny showed, she said, you're going to hear a lot about intersectionality. Intersectionality is also a part of this work, and it is a huge piece for us to be able to understand. Most times, individuals that identify with a disability, you can't see it with the naked eye. And that is one thing that we have been really, really focused on, is helping our partners, helping the community understand the importance of intersectionality. And so I will use myself for an example. I am a Black female, and my intersections as a Black female, who, by the way, I identify as she, her, hers. My intersections are: I am Black, I am a woman, I have a disability, I am a Christian, I am a college grad, and I am heterosexual. Those are 6 of my intersections, of many others, but those are 6. So if you cannot relate to me as being Black or as a female, the other 4 intersections of me being a college grad, me being a Christian, me identifying with a disability, or me, any of those, then we can literally engage in some amazing conversation. We can really begin to get to some true understanding of how can we be able to connect outside of just race and outside of gender. If I change my intersections for the purpose of this conversation, I still am a woman, I still am Black. Now I'm no longer heterosexual, I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. I still have a disability, I still am a Christian, I'm still a college grad, but now I'm a veteran. So as my intersections change, it gives us the opportunity to overlap collaboration, overlap education, overlap understanding. And this is why the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and collectively gathering those partnerships and being engaged in those community partnerships are so very important. And so the Michigan and the National Diversity Council, we are grateful for our relationship with MRS. I encourage you to tap into your local diversity council within your markets and within your region, to be engaged with other professionals around this work, to learn how to tie in and advance the conversation and inclusion of individuals that identify with disabilities through the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Jenny, I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Darlene. Just, boy, every time I hear you speak, I'm always learning something new. Thank you so much for taking the time today and going a little bit deeper dive on some of those topics that I had touched on a little bit earlier in that intersectionality piece. Our next speaker is going to be Nasha Ely. She is part of my team, our team that works for Michigan Rehabilitation Services. She is one of our business consultants. And Nasha, I'm going to now hand the baton to you again.
Thank you, Jenny. As Jenny mentioned, my name is Nasha Ely. I'm a business relations consultant at Michigan Rehabilitation Services, and I work in the Business Network Division. I'm a female wearing a burgundy colored sweater, purplish blue glasses, and today my hair is in a shoulder length twisted style. Jenny and Darlene have provided great information today with statistics and partnering, components of workplace, diversity, equity, and inclusion, examples of intersectionality, and so much more for us to kind of take with us. But now I'm going to specifically discuss the partnership between the Michigan Diversity Council and Michigan Rehabilitation Services Business Network Division. The relationship that MRS has with our business customer and contacts at Flagstar Bank was the catalyst to our partnership with MIDC. Flagstar Bank requested that MRS and MIDC meet and work together to facilitate a training for a self-ID campaign, which would better assist them with this need since no one was providing this type of training. So our initial meeting took place in June of 2019. And since that time has developed into a mutually beneficial partnership for both of our organizations, which directly impacts the customers and businesses that we each serve respectively. With our partnership, with our strategic partnership, we are both working in the DE&I space and partnering to work and educate and empower businesses. We work together to have a unified voice to business and speak to demand-driven needs. So we are different organizations. We have different missions, but we're working together to meet the needs of business. With our respective expertise, the businesses that we work with can benefit from us individually and together in the space of DE&I. So as Darlene mentioned, MIDC addresses all aspects of diversity, where MRS in the Business Network Division has a specific expertise in disability and employment. But we work together to meet the needs of businesses, to address those intersectionalities, and to assist customers and all Michiganders, to improve diversity efforts within the state of Michigan. We also have state and national reaches. So MIDC is the Michigan Diversity Council entity. And as many of you may know, MRS would be the Michigan Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. But we strengthen our current business partnerships and relationships. And this allows us to assist businesses by meeting various points of contact from businesses that MRS has relationships with, that MIDC has relationships with, but now we can have these deeper relationships because these other partners are brought in to assist with developing and meeting the needs that they may have related to DE&I. So some of the stakeholders that we have been able to do this with include AAA, Henry Ford Health System, and some more that I'll go into in a later slide. One thing this partnership has also helped us in VR realize is that DE&I professionals at various organizations may be housed under different parts of human resources that VR professionals don't typically interact with. With VR, we're usually interacting with recruiters or maybe trainers or someone who's actually doing hiring or onboarding, but DE&I professionals historically have not been part of our conversations. So now with this partnership, it has expanded our view, opened up our points of contact where we have other people at these businesses to connect with. And truly, we may be better aligned to work in the DE&I space in the work that we do than we may be with some of the other parts of HR. We are also working to meet the immediate needs of businesses. So over time, our partnership has evolved. We've provided mental health and mindfulness training. We've participated in the MIDC Disability Summit, which I will speak to a little bit later again. We've provided recorded disability etiquette training for the National Diversity Council Toolkit as a resource to businesses. And we also have a talent pool of diverse candidates that may meet the needs of businesses that MIDC already partners with. So in a nutshell, we come together to work with businesses and organizations in Michigan, as well as those with multi-state, national, and sometimes even international footprints to meet their DE&I needs. As we move on to our next slide and kind of go into our strategic partnership and the mutual benefits that we've had. On the screen, you can see some of the businesses that each organization may or may not have had a relationship with. But our partnership has now led to new or enhanced existing relationships. So the Michigan Diversity Council was able to, MRS was able to introduce or enhance relationships between PNC Bank, Northrop Grumman, TWB Company, which is a joint venture between Worthington Industries and BAO Steel for training purposes related to DE&I, that we may have already been working with. We also have the introduction to CSAVR, which is the Council of State Administrators in Vocational Rehabilitation. Anybody who works in VR understands that this is like our umbrella flagship, right? So that introduction has led to additional partnerships with other VR agencies across the country. Then the Diversity Council has been able to help MRS in enhancing or developing relationships with organizations like Wayne State University, Detroit Public Television, Cisco, and Flagstar. And with this all, there's also been the ability to introduce businesses to MIDC as they are launching in West Michigan, which is scheduled for 2022. When we think of, on the next slide, our training and outreach and what that might look like with us working and partnering together, and given the area that MRS is highly specialized in, and the MIDC had not really taken a deep dive into disability, diversity, equity, and inclusion, MRS was able to provide subject matter expertise in an area the council didn't have expertise in, but also an area where businesses were asking for this type of support. And then MIDC has trained staff to provide guidance to businesses in areas that are outside of the MRS wheelhouse, but closely connected, because the customers that we work with, whether it is our business customers or our individual customers from our districts, have the intersectionalities where we might not be able to speak to some of them, but we can partner with MIDC to have those conversations to assist both our dual customers in their employment. So with this, businesses continually ask for resources to target these areas, and MIDC was a partner that was missing in being able to address these business needs. Our partnership has led to the creation of the MIDC-sponsored Disability Summit, which I mentioned previously. And this took place in October of 2020 and 2021, which is during National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Currently, there are plans to continue this event on an annual basis. So you can stay connected with us so we can let you know about those. The summit focuses on providing disability employment related information and resources for the business community, specific to, but not all inclusive, but related to the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, businesses and the best practices that they have related to disability employment, assistive technology and reasonable accommodations, and many other topics that meet the needs of businesses. These summits are developed in a way that 3 sessions are very specific to targeting businesses, and 3 sessions are strategically presented topics that businesses have asked for. Each event in 2020 and 2021, attendance numbers reached upwards of 180 participants. And this was a joint partnership between MIDC and Michigan Rehabilitation Services. Along with our partnership, multiple businesses and other organizations were brought in by both sides to deliver content. Something new that is kind of in the works right now is a My Disability ERG. And this will be a new subchapter under the Michigan Diversity Council and hopefully the National Diversity Council, which is gonna be very specific to disability employment. So I hope this information kind of gives you a little insight into what our partnership looks like. And I'm gonna pass it back to Jenny.
Great, thank you, Nasha. Nasha, I'm gonna put you on the spot for just a moment though, if you can put your camera back on. Can you talk a little bit more about the ERG in terms of the employer resource group, as opposed to employee resource group? This is an employer resource group. You know, where the struggle bus was, if you will, when we were, you know, pulling businesses together that were so like-minded, so intentional, and wanting to really, again, yeah, you've been hearing me say this, move that needle on disability employment. Can you talk a little bit more about that for a minute?
Yes, the My Disability Employee Resource Group started just as some businesses in Michigan, Southeast Michigan, Southeast Michigan, the Metro Detroit area, coming together to people from their respective disability employee resource groups to talk about strategies, resources, events, and things that have been taking place. And it evolved to over 20, might be 20, 25 businesses that come together quarterly to have these discussions. The thing about it is there was no real structure. There was no one formula that was being followed to kind of bring everyone together to have like a plan of action of how to do things, how to be most productive and to move that needle forward. So some things were discussed. There were, the group tried to do this, tried to establish the structure, tried to kind of get housed in a way where they could all kind of come together and be almost like this entity instead of just businesses together talking quarterly. So after we developed the partnership with MIDC, we kind of started on our team at MRS talking about, wouldn't it be cool if we could try to connect the My Disability ERG to MIDC, because we couldn't see that there was a specific disability committee that kind of would address needs that businesses had. So from our kind of brainstorm, we came together with Darlene, and she thought it was a great idea, and things have been moving along, going up the chain to see what this can look like. So I think this will be a great opportunity for this group to just be kind of connected somehow in a more structured way, where their initiatives can move forward to move the needle forward in their respective businesses and as a joint collaborative. I don't know if that answered that question at all, but I think I did.
Yeah, no, that's great, Nasha. Thank you. Again, that's, I think, when you think about the conference theme in terms of new year, new ideas, this is what we started kind of marinating on, and, and having a partnership like we have with Darlene and having her input and collaboration really allowed us to let this go from being, something that's marinating to something that, now we're kind of cooking with grease here. So thank you, Nasha, for providing a little more detail on that and just some exciting kind of next steps for us, along with addressing, a lot of the previous, activities that we've been doing that have allowed us to build this partnership together and really learn and grow from one another. All right, so on our next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about that kind of call to action, if you will. We're handing the baton to you, asking our audience members, where will you go from here? It's a benefit then to not only be forward thinking, of course, but what we're trying to do today is also be thinking in the moment, thinking about some of the, the earlier information we shared, some of the stats, because that's where we are, right? As we learn, as we grow and work, we must continue to keep in mind that many of the individual customers or clients, within vocational rehabilitation system, not to mention employees of vocational rehabilitation or community organizations, and the contacts we work with, within businesses and industry, as well, again, as our partner organizations, are not just singularly defined individuals. So many of them belong to more than one protected class, more than just disability, placing them within this intersection. And Darlene shared her story, for example. They experience limitations from disability and society, as we know. Vocational rehabilitation professionals are trained to address the limitations of disability and to advocate against disability discrimination. But we know some limitations, some actions of discrimination go beyond disability and enter into that space of intersectionality that Darlene spoke quite a bit about. So for vocational rehabilitation, we need to be poised to act for the good of our dual customer, the client customer and the business customer. Vocational rehab must not only be aware of those challenges, but we must be prepared to meet those challenges through creative and appropriate channels too. So on our next slide, Our respective teams have worked hard together. Nasha hit on some of that earlier. To be inclusive and to learn from one another. Like all good partnerships, in order to reach our full potential and impact for our customers, our teams truly mutually embrace a quote that's on the slide here, Brené's Brown theory on the importance of vulnerability. And that's, vulnerability is the birthplace of creativity, innovation, and change. We can also comfortably have authentic conversations with one another and know it's a safe place to share, express ideas, learn from one another, not feel shamed. So the other quote we wanted to share with you that my team's been hearing from me on a regular basis of this last year and a half is our mindset as partners and internal team members, that mantra, if you will, following that African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So maybe the better closing comment or question is, who do you see yourself within this relay race on intersectionality and disability in the new year? So I just want to also end with one additional question, and this is for Darlene. Darlene, if any of our audience members are interested in finding their, respective diversity council organization or someone within the National Diversity Council, within their state, where should they start?
Great question. So if you are looking more on the lines of state partnership, so if you're in Florida and you're looking for some assistance from the Florida Diversity Council, then you would type in floridadiversitycouncil.org. If you're in Arizona, it's the Arizona Diversity Council.org. If you are looking for national participation and presence, then it is the National Diversity Council.org. At that website, the National Diversity Council.org, you would definitely be able to see a location map of all of the markets that we are in. And then, of course, if you need some assistance and just say, I don't know where to start and I don't know what to do, then you can always reach out to me directly. Because although I am the executive director for the Michigan Diversity Council, I am a consultant for the National Diversity Council. So I am easy to be found. It is Darlene at nationaldiversitycouncil.org. Again, Darlene at nationaldiversitycouncil.org. And I will be able to assist and direct you in the appropriate places. So thank you so much, Jenny, for that.
This is our contact information. So you'll see Darlene's email address there, along with mine, Jenny Pyatt, and then Nasha Ely. You'll see her contact information. We are more than happy if you have questions or you would like to have some dialogue about some of those partnering activities that we've been doing, or how we're kind of moving forward. We would certainly entertain those conversations as well. So again, many thanks, Nasha and Darlene, for co-presenting today. Great teamwork approach. We hope that folks walked away with some information that you can use moving ahead into the new year with new ideas. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or comments. We are certainly open to any feedback from today's session as well. So thank you. Have a wonderful remainder of your conference, and we look forward to your feedback.